Happy fall, everybody. Here's a few quick updates for you. First is monitoring. This is self-monitoring year, and so I want to tell you what's going on related to that right now. Well, during the month of November, the coordinators are going to be coming in, pulling some of your files. They may say, hey, I noticed that Johnny's IEP is due next week. I'd really like to look at it before it goes home. They're looking to make sure that that IEP is in compliance. You don't have to show them all IEPs. If they're asking you, it's pretty good chance that file is going to be reviewed as part of the file review. If they review a file and they say, oh boy, we have some concerns, they may ask you to move up an evaluation or an IEP so that we can have it done before we review files. So that we can address those concerns so that we don't have to have a citation in those areas. Because in December, we're going to be pulling 50 files. The Minnesota Department of Education gives us a list of students, and we have to pull the list from those, every one of the files that MDE gives us. It'll take us about a week, so we're going to kind of be holed up for a while, really digging into those files. When you get that file back, you will get some feedback about what was in the file, what was in compliance, and what was not. That will be it. You'll get a copy of the file review checklist that we used. You also might get some sticky notes in there, so be watching for those. And if not with the file shortly after, you will get a list of directions of things that you need to fix and how you need to fix those. And it will be important that you fix those as quickly as you can. That's where you're going to kick in, and from the middle of December till the middle of January, we need you to fix as much of those files as you can. The quicker we get things fixed, the less we have to do next year, and the more we can move on and not worry about the paperwork side of things. Be aware that monitoring is a high priority item. We need all of you to be helping us out in all ways that we can. And also be aware that the coordinators are going to be pretty busy with this. They're going to be missing some time out in the districts, but they are still supporting you by doing this file review process, which is an important piece of what we do. And due process is certainly a huge piece of the coordinator's positions. Some updates within our office. Laura Tevedal works within our office, but she's going to be going part-time. She seems to think this little cutie is more fun to hang out with than us in our office. So she's going to be going half-time. She will be continuing to do accounts payable, accounts receivable, and purchasing for Southern Plains. However, we'll be taking the other pieces off of her position and adding Anna Oswald, who will be our human resource generalist and be starting November 14th. Anna will be doing any of the people aspects, so the reports that we need to make for the state and federal government, that kind of thing. She might also have contact with some of you because she will be assisting with the hiring of paraprofessionals for Fairmont School District. She might be helping me with issues that arise, training that needs to occur, that kind of thing along the way. So if you get to meet Anna, be sure to give her a warm greeting, and you'll enjoy working with her. She's a real sweetheart. I want to give you a few reminders regarding the Bridges program over in Winnebago. The Bridges program is our behavioral program. It is not a day treatment or a therapeutic program anymore. In reality, it has not changed in the types of services we provide to students. However, it is not technically day treatment or a therapeutic program. Those are legal terms, and we don't do all the paperwork that's associated with that, so we can't call it that. But some of the selling points that you can give to parents is that it does have a higher staff to student ratio with a more structured environment, and our staff has certainly received a lot of training in how to support students with social, emotional, and behavioral issues. So be careful about using that day treatment and therapeutic terminology. And a reminder that when students are referred to the Bridges program, that you need to work with the coordinator within your building. We need to try as many things as we can prior to referring students to the Bridges program, and the coordinators are a big help in that, and the coordinators can communicate with Stephanie to make sure that it is an appropriate referral to the Bridges program. A few reminders from the fall in-service. The first thing we talked about, one of the things we talked about was paraprofessionals. As you're entering IEP season and actually having IEP meetings, a reminder that we want to discuss at those meetings how we can fade support for students. Be talking to the general ed teachers and the parents and getting them in the mindset that our goal is to make students as independent as possible. Be thinking about what kinds of goals we can set for that student that will help them become more independent, and can we reduce some of the accommodations that are needed. Recently, I was reviewing a file that had 27 different accommodations, and there was no way that the classroom teacher would be able to remember every one of those accommodations. So is there a way we can consolidate them? But mostly, are there things that the student can now do independently as the student gets older and has gained their skills in other areas? Can they now read the test to themselves? Can they now try things within the mainstream setting? And be talking about how you can reduce those accommodations. We also talked during the fall in-service about progress and what to do about lack of progress. A general statement to remember is that all students must make reasonable progress, or it is the IEP team's obligation to address that lack of progress. Progress reports are an important piece of that. So there are 3 required components of the progress report. First is that you have to have a date. That's an easy one and not one that I've seen become an issue. Then you have to check one of those boxes. Is a student making adequate progress? So you check adequate, inadequate, or goal met. When I was reviewing IEPs to see how we were doing with this as I prepared for this, there were 4 IEPs where there was no box checked. And what an easy thing to do, but it's also easy to overlook. So just be careful about that and make sure you have a box checked. And then you have to have some data that reflects the skills on that goal itself. I've been asked the question, what is adequate progress? Well, at the trajectory that the student is currently progressing at, will they meet that goal before the end of this IEP? That's what adequate progress means. If it's not adequate, then we have inadequate progress. Well, what are you going to do about that? First is you want to address right in the progress report what you're doing to address that lack of progress. But if that student is not going to meet the goal, whether it be right at that progress report time, maybe you need to address that, or certainly if you have 2 progress reports in a row that are inadequate progress, or maybe even you have a progress report, you say, hey, we're going to change the curriculum, and I know this will help address that, and 2 or 3 weeks after you've changed that curriculum, the student's still not making adequate progress, it's time to hold a meeting. At that meeting, then you want to talk about, is this goal really appropriate? Should we have set a different goal? Do we need to increase the intensity and give the student more services? Maybe the goal just isn't important. If the student is making inadequate progress and is not going to meet that goal before the end of the year, then it is time to hold a meeting. Also within this should all flow together and show that the progress report leads to progress on that goal. So as I was reviewing some files, I found some concerns, and here's one example. So in this goal, it was written by 2015, the student would independently increase his organizational skills from 40% to 80%. A year later, they wrote an identical goal, which was to a higher degree, but you'll see that by December 2015, the student was supposed to be at 80%, yet their baseline the next year was at 60%. And every progress report indicated that the student was making adequate progress to attain that goal over the course of the year. There was never a meeting to address that. This shows me that student did not make adequate progress and the student did not receive a free appropriate public education because we didn't address that. So be aware of that. I also want to talk about some progress reports. So here's a student's goal. A student will increase his ability to initiate work within the classroom setting. And the progress report stated that the student's been struggling with mental health concerns, so the focus has not been on academics at this time. You know, that may be okay. If for first quarter the student is just really not able to focus on that, we're not worrying about that right now, that would be an okay progress report. There was a concern with this progress report because they didn't check a box. So you still need to check a box, and it would still be a good idea to put some data in here. This would be okay. If within about 3 weeks, I would assume that first of all, you've been talking to the parents along the way related to this. And if within about 3 weeks, we're not moving forward on this, it's time for a meeting. Here's another progress report. The student will improve his job skills. Okay, I have some concerns. This isn't necessarily a measurable goal, but there are some additional concerns. This talks about not having a job or obtaining a job, and in all 3 of the progress reports, the student never did attain a job. And the student really didn't make adequate progress by the looks of it. They kept pushing everything off till fall, and so it wouldn't be until the next IEP that they were actually even going to address this goal, yet they were checking adequate progress. It would have been more appropriate to have a meeting at that time. Here was an example of some really great data that appeared in a goal. The student will increase his fine motor skills from 0 out of 5 of these skills to 4 out of 5 of these skills. And they put a date, they marked adequate progress, and then they have very specific data regarding each one of those skills. We want to see that data in there. Again, a date, a checkbox, and then the data. So those are a few reminders for you as you are finishing up progress reports. Be sure you're getting that good data in there. Be sure that you're having meetings if the student is not making adequate progress. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to holler, and enjoy the lovely fall weather. Take care.